Book Interrupted has been nominated for a People's Choice Podcast Award. We'd like to thank our fans for all your support. Voting is still open if you'd like to vote for us at www.podcastawards.com. We can be found under the leisure section.
Mind, body, and soul. The information is the goal. Try to learn something new without being distracted.
This is something I wrote down when I was writing it.
I know.
This
I was
is
like,
something-
you wrote Sapiens?
You wrote Sapiens? Oh my gosh.
It just came to me.
The gossip, right? It's
just came right out of
revealed!
me.
Yeah, 36 hours, done.
Yuval
My
Noah
pen name
Harari
is-
used a ghostwriter, and it's Meredith!
Boom!
Shocking. Scandal of the century.
While I was reading it, I took very little notes, but I wrote this. What does he say? Modern science differs from previous traditions of knowledge by a willingness to admit ignorance, centrality of observation in mathematics, and acquisition of new powers. And I think it was interesting. He's talking about the scientific revolution and how part of what made it happen was admitting that we don't know anything. And I think that the internet has kind of made us go the other way. We're in this culture in North America where it's like, fake it till you make it, have confidence whether you know it or not, and pretend. And so it's for some reason very risky for people to admit they don't know something. So people just not admit they're ignorant and assume that they know, and then just find other people to tell them that they're right. And it's like, it just like feeds us misinformation. And it's kind of a weird place we're in, where we got to the scientific revolution and learned all this stuff. And now we're kind of almost like unlearning all the stuff we learned and replacing it with stories, and stories that support what we think is true. Just like the feelings we have about life. And we're like, oh yeah, somebody wrote that story. Was it Meredith? Was it Yuval Noah Harari? Who knows? But I heard that Meredith wrote it, so I believe it.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, we've got to this place where like now the internet has made us go in the other direction, and I don't know if there's going to be a different revolution, like a name for that. What we're going through right now.
What would the revolution be called?
The technological.
I was
Revolution,
gonna call
for
it
sure.
the
fake
fake
news.
news, like
Fake news revolution.
or like
The
Liar-
toupee. The Trump toupee.
yeah.
Something
dear.
crazy.
The Trump toupee. I love it.
Trump toupee.
It's gotta be.
Clearly what it's going to be called. I love what you're raising here, Meredith, because it's so true. There is way too much information for us to even begin to digest all of it. And yeah, it is coming at the cost of making a distinction between information and knowledge, that we seem to be less and less tapping into even our own inner wisdom, let alone the wisdom that has been passed down from our ancestors. And everyone's an expert now. Like, how many of us, when we get sick, before going to the doctor, we go on Google and we self-diagnose with all the ailments?
And also just even like reading different articles, like if you don't know like Kim was saying in the other one, the fake news stuff, like you go on Snoops, or you try to figure out what's real and not real. And it makes me think, like, then people regurgitate supposedly I heard this and I heard this, and none, but right, it's just gossip, but there's so much gossip that it's hard to determine what's actually like real and scientific and what's actually just hearsay. And that comes into play actually since I've been in Canada, because so many people have told me what the rules are for coming to Canada for COVID. So many people are like, oh no, you have to do this, and you can do this, and you can't do that.
It's the person who's the most confident, and sometimes the person who's the most confident isn't the one who knows the most, right? Like if I know somebody and they never admit they're wrong, sometimes I question that. Or somebody's like, oh, I was wrong there. I'm like, I feel like I can trust that person in the future because they're willing to say they were wrong.
I think all the six of us are really into admitting when we don't know things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's not just the six of us. I think there's a lot of people that are on that kind of trend now of being like, actually, we don't know. And as you get older, I think, wisdom is saying, isn't that a saying or something? But wisdom is saying you don't know. And so hopefully there is that trend going where we're going back to, admitting we don't know and doing the research and putting in the time and energy in order to in order to learn and to know the truth, as opposed to gossip or whatever Sarah was saying.
Like
What it was Squiggy saying, remember? Like, I'm not the expert, I'm just part of the experiment or something. What did it, whatever it was, I wanted to make it a t-shirt. Like, it was good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was, I'm not the expert, I'm just part of the experiment. I think that was it. Yeah.
And that's kind of what, when you're talking, Schweitz, I'm reminded of.
Is that maybe a good thing? Like, maybe is it like, it's like we're maybe suffering from like all of a sudden with the internet and the rapidly changing information pouring into us all the time, and the fake news, has it changed the foundation of what we believe to be how we learn and what is true? And to play devil's advocate, is it possibly a good thing? Now, when you apply it to scientific knowledge, that gets a bit hairy, but like not trusting everything, could that be a good thing?
For sure.
Critical thinking.
Critical
Yeah,
thinking.
for sure.
Maybe we're entering an era of
the critical thinking
Self-
revolution.
The beginning
critical
of
thinking. Trust. Now, even if it's like I'm a flat earther and I ignore all science and I'm just gonna walk till I get to that fucking
Edge.
I don't know what happens.
And then I
don't
keep
know.
walking around and around and around.
But
what's on the other side?
yeah, like if it's about self discovery.
I think I know what you're saying. If they have a good critical thinking, then at the very least, what they believe, they've thought about it more deeply, perhaps, and then looked at other things to see like if their beliefs are really grounded or not. I don't know.
Yes,
Like,
or maybe it's about
it's
not
more-
believing fully in anything, like not taking anything
at face value.
at face value.
That's right. Taking everything with a grain of salt. What other expressions do we have?
I don't
Yeah.
know. Could that be a good thing?
It is a good
Like
thing.
a lot of this book talked
I think
about the Industrial Revolution and agriculture, particularly was a real big like that nobody thought that they were doing that when they were doing that. But
Yeah.
what they created was
Some bad things.
some good, some bad.
Yeah.
This book highlights particularly more of the negative side effects of that. But not in a judgmental way. But that's kind of interesting. It's like, what is you don't know until you're out of it. You only can see. Sometimes I feel like when you're
Hindsight
in
is
something,
2020.
there you
nice
go.
one.
Another
Speaking
one at
of,
it.
yeah.
Another little one at it.
Book interrupted.
My interruption is making cover art or a new book jacket for Sapiens. Putting the old girl back together again.
Book interrupted.
When you're talking, I'm thinking about conspiracy theories, right? Like there's a healthy level of distrust and discernment and critical thinking. And then there's people who like think they know better or have some inside scoop into like the Clintons eating babies or whatever the crazy theories are. And like, when did that start? You know, like did that happen before the scientific revolution? Did that happen before the Enlightenment era? Like when did that start that people started making up conspiracy theories?
There is no fix here. It's like all sources of media, including podcasting. It's like all of this is just fucking opinion. There's just no. It felt kind of good to like believe in news. Remember when you would watch the news and believe it?
Yeah, that's
And
I know, but I know what you're saying, Leah, because that's what makes me feel upset is that I
like,
want
where
to
do
be.
I go?
Well, that's what I say. I want to be someone who can go to a source and rely on that source and then use it to form my opinions about how I feel.
Source.
Right. And then I do feel like the sources are all more and more unreliable because they're divided. And it's like political.
Everything is a business. Everything
That's
is a
right.
business.
I
But
feel
they've
the same
always
way.
been. You read a newspaper knowing if it's left leaning or it's right leaning. And then you take that and you use what you're talking about, the critical thinking skills, in order to process that and go, okay, I know who the editor is. I know who what their view is, so therefore I can take that information. It's just unfortunately now online,
But even with
you don't know the
science,
sources.
it's like even with things like science that should be a little bit more black and white, a little more black and white, a little less gray. There's so much. It's like the
I don't
COVID
even
thing.
know if
Really,
science is wholly objective.
But also, like,
Yeah.
journals are more likely to like publish a paper if it's found a result, and if it hasn't found one, if it said, "Oh, I studied this and there's no difference," then they're less likely to publish that. So then you can have like a scientific paper that maybe the experiment wasn't very rigorous and they get like a certain result, but it found a difference, and that's what's getting published. And maybe another researcher did something similar and it didn't, and that's not necessarily getting published. So it's the stuff that's getting published is skewed towards differences rather than sameness. And also you have science writers, like, I don't know about you, like, one of the reasons I like science books is I want somebody to go and go through all the references and
Me
like condense it
too.
down for me.
especially when it comes to
Differences.
health related things, I want to feel like, okay, someone like there's not
isn't a
enough hours in the
fad.
day for this. Yeah.
And then there's so much science writing out there, and you have to find,
I'm stressed
ideally
out,
you
y'all.
find somebody that you trust, that does it and you trust. And then there's other people who misinterpret it because they want the clickbait and they want the fancy like headlines, and the clickbait gets distributed faster.
Also, the science that's being done is the stuff that's being funded by the people who have the money, who want her lobbying for, you know what I mean? Like it's all the business there too, because there's plenty of things that they should be doing scientifically, but there's no money. Like we've talked about that with like
women's health.
Women's
health.
right?
Or even that, remember we talked about race science, and when that
Race
came up and
science.
people decided to fund this idea of this race science to basically to prove that
There's
in
a
their
superior
minds,
race.
yeah, that there was a
Yeah.
superior race, which is ridiculous. But it was funded, and that's what people thought was, oh well, this study said that.
It just goes back to
you know,
everything's a commodity, everything's commercialized. And
But
I
wasn't
don't
there a time when journalists were like taking the journalistic version of a Hippocratic oath, where it was to find the truth, and it wasn't about a leaning this way or a leaning that way? And
Well, where do they
But then
work?
they'd
And
have
where
to
can
still
we
give
read
it to the
not anymore.
editor.
They don't exist anymore. But I think it's because of the same thing you're lamenting as well, about how everything's become such a big business that, like Sarah says, you can trace it back to whoever's funding whatever, and that's the angle you're going to get fed. But I feel like there was a time, Lindsay, not that long ago, where journalism was just about reporting the truth. Like, and I mean, I guess still
yeah.
that's subjective to whoever's reporting it.
Right, what you
Yes.
They're
believe
trying
is
their
right.
best, but
yeah.
what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
But it was harder to find, like in internet age, it's easy to find other people who believe the same thing as you, because you can connect with whatever, and so you can find those stories. Whereas before, it's like the people who deny climate change. They'll say, well, here's some scientific papers that prove that it's not happening, right? But it's the number of them. It's the kind of like that with the internet. You know, you can find, if there's only a small percentage of people that believe in the crazy conspiracy that you believe in, you can still find a lot of people. And in Sapiens, when he talks about what people, once gossiping came about, we could cooperate in groups of like 150, then now it's easy to find your 150 to cooperate with.
Oh my
and to
gosh,
like
for sure.
reaffirm all of the
well,
things
and
you want
add
to
to
believe.
that algorithms, right? Like they'll bring your 150 to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
then, as
totally,
part
totally.
of what we can do is really researching who are the people out there producing information and seeing if we're on board with their perspective and ethics and integrity. Is that one step that we could take then?
But
I mean,
again,
you
it's
could-
all
who
just
has
judgment,
time?
right? And the critical thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking revolution.
Well,
And
you
who's-
just-
You know, who's funding, like, okay, who owns that newspaper, and what businesses do they have like interests in, and like the amount of research and bubble and rabbit hole you would have to go down just to determine if that one article you read.
just to like watch something on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3.5 hours later.
I don't know, you find a news or numerous news sources that you trust, and that aren't BuzzFeed and the stuff, and look at their investigative journalism. I mean, I went to journalism school, so I do know, I know, Kim, you were saying you hope there was a time when people, I think that everybody has a viewpoint. So anyone writing any article, you can choose to add some information and not other, and all of a sudden it's leaning towards something or the other. So you're never going to get completely unbiased.
There's 3 sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth.
It's another good one, Mare.
Maybe this like critical thinking revolution, or whatever we want to call it, the Trump toupee, will end with the rise of the cyborgs. Because Sarah's like, we didn't really talk about like the idea of like cyborgs and.
No, cyborgs scare me. Like, doesn't Alexa kind of freak you guys out? Or sometimes Siri gives me like attitude.
Siri's not a cyborg. Isn't like a cyborg like part
in my
human,
mind she's a cyborg.
Part robot.
Well, that's a good question. What
human,
is the
part
definition
robot.
of a cyborg?
I think so.
I
Part
think you have to
human, part robot.
We don't know
So-
percentages, but I think there has to be some human organs at least left.
Yeah, so there will be people who might be
There
In our
technically
lifetime.
There are people
cyborgs.
right now who are cyborgs. then.
Yeah, who have like
There are
amputees
people
with
right now.
arms.
They
They're
actually
like
have the
robotic.
technology now where like your brain can talk to an artificial arm, and the artificial arm will move like
wow.
from
That's
your
cyborg.
brain.
Cool.
Yeah,
So if
they
you've
have
lost
that
your
already.
arm, I think
Yeah,
a lot
they
of
have
like
that.
It's
army,
amazing.
you know, vets and stuff who've lost their limbs in battle have some of those for them.
Really amazing.
Really cool.
And they mentioned how they're doing research right now where a computer can analyze your thoughts, a human's thoughts, and put it into the computer. Like you don't have to tell Siri anymore any questions. Siri
never
will just
understands
know
me
your
anyway.
your
I
thoughts.
don't like that.
Me neither.
Bam.
That
I'm
freaked
not
me
into
out.
it.
I wouldn't want it.
Have you seen
Like,
that show? Black Mirror.
I
Mhm.
love
do,
that
yeah.
show.
Oh, that's pretty. I only watched a few
So
episodes,
fucked
but
up.
there was one where it's all like a lot of it's about kind of the
It's very
the
dark.
role of AI and
Was it that
and
one
computers.
Disturbing.
with Bryce Dallas Howard?
Yeah, that one.
That's the one I remember too.
And
Where
it's
she had to
like
get like
likes or
likes.
something.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
And
you
she's
couldn't
going-
get like a taxi to come get you because you didn't have enough likes. Or it was so stressful.
And so she had to say hello to everybody and like be really charming all the time because
Yeah.
everybody judged you every single moment. It was really freaky.
Well, stuff
Yeah.
like that is happening in the world, right?
Yeah, well, that's the
which
point.
government gives you like points for being like socially responsible?
Who
Is it
does?
China?
Oh,
They're, like if you do something bad, you lose points.
That's
Like,
classic behavior modification.
It is.
but
But
it's like,
it
did
works
they
for me
get
on
the idea?
Uber. I'm so afraid to lose my 5 stars on Uber.
That was kind of the gist of that Black
I'm
Mirror
like,
episode. It was based on like how
best.
you rate your driver, and yeah, everybody's rating you
Yeah,
all the
but
time.
everybody-
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Book Interrupted.